Hi, and welcome to Connected Conversations for Creatives, a place where creatives like you can learn, grow, and connect. I'm your host, Jennifer Carr. There are times when our passion and our profession intersect, and other times they run parallel or away from each other altogether. Some of the most rewarding times are when one inspires the other. And in a world that often glorifies the relentless pursuit of success, the importance of a work life balance cannot be overstated. It's not merely a matter of finding time for relaxation, it's a fundamental necessity for our physical and mental well being. A balanced life is where we find the space to nurture our passions, foster meaningful relationships, and recharge our spirits. It's where creativity thrives, where resilience is born, and where we discover the true essence of fulfillment. Today's guest is an author who has faced the struggle many of us creatives have to find the balance between a profession and a passion. And amidst her journey to find this balance, she has allowed her full-time job to become a tool that helps foster her creativity. With a desire to bring awareness to social issues through fictional worlds, she doesn't merely craft stories, she breathes life into narratives that confront some of the most daunting and pressing issues of our time. Her words resonate with an emotional depth that can only come from someone who is not merely writing about hard topics, but immersing herself in them, striving to give a voice to those who may otherwise remain unheard. So I am excited to introduce today's guest, author N.L. Blandford. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Oh, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself and about your background.
Okay. Well, I currently live in Eastern Canada in the Maritimes. I just moved here a couple months ago, so I'm still actually navigating the settling down in the opposite side of the country, but I investigate fraud full time for a bank here in Canada, and that's very interesting to me because it's actually from the internal perspective. So, like the employees who are stealing the money or potentially
Right.
breaking our rules. But yeah, so I do that full time and then I write when I can,
Right.
in addition to taking care of my three fur babies and my husband.
Yes, that needs to be stated. Sometimes they have
Right?
to be taken care of.
Exactly. So that's a little bit about me. I don't know.
Okay, so in our pre-show communication, you mentioned using like a blend of fantasy and reality in your stories. So how do we bring those two elements together in your writing?
Well, that's a good question. So my first series is actually about human trafficking. So there's the reality.
Mm, mm.
Um, and because I dive into such a difficult topic, I needed to, I preferred to do so from a fictional angle in order to give myself a little bit of leeway, but at the same time reflect the actuality that is human trafficking. So I do not, I don't like the word gloss over, but I
Right.
don't gloss over the hard stuff. There are scenes in there that are very difficult, and I felt that I needed to include those to be authentic to that world and yet allow fictional characters to do the storytelling.
Oh, and that's hard because a lot of times when I pick up a book, for me specifically, I pick up a book to escape reality, which means, getting away from those gritty places and themes. And so but I get it because in my second book that I wrote, I took a risk and I wrote about some pretty heavy topics. I mean, domestic violence and foster
Hmm.
care and adoption, like some really big things. And I've been an advocate for all three of those things in my adulthood, like since I knew how to become an advocate. Do you ever struggle with writing the realness and the rawness of these issues?
Oh, for sure. I
Mhm.
think I had this idea in my head, probably 5 or more years before I got the courage to actually write it down because I was afraid of what people would think,
Mm,
especially survivors if they happen
mm,
to read it. And maybe they weren't even survivors of human trafficking, but like you said, like sexual abuse or
yeah.
domestic abuse, because there's physical abuse in that world too, right? So fear held me back for a little bit, but I am. I feel like I've been rewarded by putting the words on the page because like people will come up to me or message me because some of my colleagues at work have read them. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could not put this book down. I thought I'd read a couple pages, but you create such gripping stories and characters that I had to like go into my bathtub so my husband could sleep so I could finish the book because the light was disturbing him. Um, but then because it's human trafficking and all the things that go with that, people learn a little bit
Mm.
about what is happening in our own backyard too.
Mm. So, like, where do you draw your inspiration for something so big and so heavy?
That's a great question.
Or
I
does it just come into your head?
I don't remember where the first initial idea for the story came from. I still have the little green notebook that my dog actually ate half of it, that had my ideas in it. But I saw a woman speak at a fraud conference in Vancouver about her experience being trafficked in Canada. I heard her speak and then I read her book, and along with Rebecca Bender, who's from the States and was trafficked in Vegas, I gathered some backgrounds through autobiographies and stuff like that. And of course, documentaries. I'm a big
Mm.
TV watcher. So I took some courses actually. I took Rebecca Bender's course, and we have one up here in Alberta that a foundation that just got started called Not My City, and they're trying to prevent human trafficking. And so I did a lot of research there in order to ensure I had an understanding of the topic so I could bring it with a little more, I don't like the word sensitive either, but a little more sensitivity into my book, I guess.
Well, I think as authors, we do owe it to those who have experienced the things to be a little sensitive towards, towards their experiences. But I think that also comes with acknowledging that it's real and saying, hey, I acknowledge that you went through this, and I'm going to be as truthful and honest as I can about it. But at the same time, you're writing to an audience who, maybe they can't handle the full truth and what's real, so you have to be really careful and maybe be a little sensitive, at least to your readers.
Exactly. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a YouTube channel where I teach authors how to use psychology to write more realistic characters, more relatable characters, because I think a good character is very necessary to good storytelling. And I don't want to read a book where a character maybe, they're deeming him a sociopath, and then technically they just write him like a guy who's mean and hateful, or they make him look like this over the top caricature. So when I write, I really like to focus on the characters. They get their own pages full of notes with backstories and motivations and all that good stuff. So how do you develop characters when you're writing something so raw? Like, where do the characters come from? Like, how do you
Mm-hmm. Yes. How do you birth your characters?
Yeah.
For this series, I just sat down on my computer and I didn't really plan a lot. Like I had my notes in my notebook and the characters just came to life. But I use like you, I kind of do a lot of research into the psychology and like the emotional thesauruses and the things
Mhm.
like that, and make sure that they're relatable. Like my bad guy's not just a bad guy. Again, I got comments. I don't know whether I should cheer for William and Olivia or not. Like he's a horrible man, but I kind of want to cheer for them. So I make them relatable because otherwise people will be like, well, that was okay. That was I don't really believe it, right? So I really played scenes in my head a lot. I'd lie in bed and I'd daydream my book out, I think is how I actually plotted the first series. And then like, I don't know if William would say that. Or I got inspiration from other sources. Like Adam he is psychotic. Um, but I was like, ooh, what would this person do in this situation? I'm not gonna say out loud. But yeah, right? You take it for real life.
Oh yeah, I think that I love people watching, and I love just human behavior in general. Obviously, I've committed most of my life to studying people and their behavior, and walking people through their their mental health and well-being, and how to get to the other side sometimes of those struggles. And just I think as writers we have to be observers. Like, we have to take in the world around us, because yeah, we may read to escape fantasy, but at the same time we have to be able to write realistically, and make it pull our readers in, and make them question, man, I really should hate this guy, but I really don't. Like, when you can give them that, because there are people in real life that I know like that. I really don't want to like you, but for some reason I do.
Yeah. And some of the like also wanted to pull in some of the, I guess, side effects or PTSD and stuff like that. Like I don't address that
Mm.
one particular, like I don't call it out in my books, but you know Olivia's going through some stuff and just how people would react to that too. Like you don't I want to, like the villains, you want to make your protagonists just as real and believable too, because you want your readers to cheer for them, but you don't want them to be one dimensional. So I like digging deep, and even my sister, we had a book launch, and her question was, which sister am I in the book? Which she wasn't either of them, because Claire, the Olivia's sister, is a drug addict whose life just falls apart. And she's like, "Am I Claire?" I'm like, "No, you are not."
Okay, so
But
yeah, but I try not to, like, when I write, because I don't want people to recognize me. I don't want people to recognize my family in the stories that I write. And so, but what was really funny is the first book that I wrote, it came from, I was having a dream. I woke up, it wasn't done. I needed to finish the dream. So I sat down and started writing it. And like, I did not realize until all was said and done, like to me, they were just characters. But then it was like, literally my kid yesterday, was it yesterday? Yeah, we were sitting in the office, and she was looking through stock photos that I had to do some social media stuff with. And she was like, do you realize that this guy, your main character, has the same like kind of job like my dad has? And I'm like, that's not intentional, but sometimes it happens. And it's like, did you
yeah,
did you write that character based on? I'm like, don't ask me that question, not on purpose.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know if you really want me to write you into my stories, just so you know.
Piss me off and I will kill you. Yeah.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Oh my gosh. So what, you write stories to give voices to those who may not be heard, which, as I mentioned in my second book, I deal with adoption and foster care. And that is a whole
Mm.
group of children who sometimes they fall through cracks. And I know we have, like, here in the States, we have a very broken system. I can speak to that, firsthand, seeing it and experiencing it. And so my goal was to make people aware that there are, one, needs for foster families, good foster families, and that the foster children themselves need resources. And so that was kind of a main mission that I attached to my book when I launched it. And so that was for me, what I wanted to do. What kind of conversations and change do you want your stories to spark?
For this first series, for sure, I donate some of the proceeds to a charity that
Mm,
uh, supports the survivors of human trafficking. But what I'm really hoping is to really just bring awareness that it is really it happens down the street. Like it's happening in your neighborhood, and it's not necessarily the cliche thing that I do in my
mm,
book where somebody gets kidnapped. But like I say in my book, I had to get somebody from point A to point B. But
right.
just bringing awareness to the fact that there's different methods of human trafficking. Not all of it's sexual. Some of it's in just workforce, and some of it
Mm,
is being facilitated by your neighbor or your family or your boyfriend that you think you can trust. So that's what I'm trying
mm,
to do, is just start that conversation about what's going on in the world, because I know even in my new province here, it's in the news all the time, unfortunately.
mm. Yeah, and we always, I know for me, until I started seeing victims up close and personal, it was always a it could never happen to me situation. Like it could never happen to somebody I know. It could never happen to one of my loved ones, and that kind of thing. And so yeah, I think that is a huge and wonderful message. I mean, it's unfortunate that we need to share that message, but good for you. I think that is a great message and in conversation to start with people, because yeah, it does a lot of times start with the people you know and trust the most.
Yeah.
Goodness. So let's move on to a little less heavy topics. But still an important one, especially for creatives. My full-time job has a lot more flexibility since I'm my own boss and I work from home. But that doesn't mean that I don't struggle to kind of balance the work and business and life and creativity side of things. And I might go so far as to say it might be a little harder because I don't always walk away from work, because my office is right here in my house, like I don't leave work. It's always right here, just looming. So do you have methods that you use to kind of keep that work life creativity balanced?
Yes and no. But I say no only because of the move across the country. My life has been thrown into chaos. But before that, and what I hope to continue is having a routine every morning. Because I work for a company that's 3 hours behind me, I start my day later. So what I'm hoping to do is get a couple hours in the morning, do some writing, or the business aspect, like the social media, the scheduling of my posts, the newsletter that I remembered walking up to my office right now. It's like, I need to send out my monthly newsletter.
Oh my gosh.
But having all of my to-dos in my agenda and just tracking my goals for the week, I think, in the writing aspect of my life for sure. And not getting down on myself if I don't necessarily hit those, because right now the books aren't paying the bills. My other job is paying the bills. So that's my primary focus, right? And when you're a one income household, you can't just be like, I'll do my day job later. So that forgiveness piece I think is really, really important, and knowing when to rest. Because for me, the move across the country right now, I'm needing the rest and to recover before my creative brain can actually process. Like I had a long weekend this weekend just because I have a day off at work, and I didn't get any writing done because my brain is so fried from the stress of moving that
Mhm.
I need to realize you just need to sit and be still sometimes and recover. Otherwise, and then you can put forward your best creative self, right?
Yes, seriously, like we think that, being creatives, we have such a free spirit and we can just always crank stuff out. And that is not always the case. As a matter of fact, there are times where words just don't exist anymore. And you're just like, I'm done. Like there's no more. I got nothing. And you can't work. You can't be your best self. You can't bring the good stuff to the table when there's nothing to bring.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I've been lying in bed. I was like, what do I want? Because I'm doing the fourth book in this series. Just, I wasn't even planning a fourth book, but I was listening to my narrator do my first book. I was like, man, I miss these characters. Like, damn it. Now I got to do a fourth book. But
People don't
I'm
understand
sitting
how
there,
connected. Yeah, people don't
right?
understand how connected you get to those characters sometimes. They're part of you.
I had already started a different series. I'm like, no, I'm pivoting back. But I'm sitting here, I'm like, I don't know what they would do as teenagers. Okay. So, but I'll get there. I know I will. I
Oh,
figured like
absolutely.
3 books out, just winging it, I say. Kind of plotting and planning and figuring out your characters, but that's the part, right? Like the creative process is just working through it in the back of your mind while you're resting. And suddenly
All
you'll
the
wake up
time.
at 2 in the morning and like, oh my gosh, this is how I solved this plot hole or corner I stuck myself in. And it took me 3 months to figure out why someone would marry a human trafficker. But I figured it out.
And that was like the clincher. Like that was the
Yeah,
motivation you needed to finish it, just to run with it.
exactly. So I was like, this is gonna make no sense. Nobody's gonna understand why. Oh,
Now they will.
now I understand her motivation. Okay, I can do
Oh my
this.
gosh, I love it. I do. I love when it hits like lightning like that. I don't appreciate it when it hits at 2 o'clock in the morning, because for some reason, like that is when my brain is the clearest, I guess. And it's just like, guess what?
Right? Yeah. Like, well, now I
Oh,
have to get
okay.
out of bed and write this down. Otherwise, I'm gonna forget it.
Yes. Yes, my phone stays right there and I will pick it up in that notes app. Like it's in there because I have to. Otherwise it's gone. It won't come
Yeah.
back. Oh my gosh. So with all of that being said, are you a plotter or are you a discovery writer? It just happens as it happens, or is it kind of a mix of the two?
I'd say it's a mix of the two. My first one, I think because I replayed it in my head so much, I'd say that one was plotted a little, although I had only planned for one book. And as I got to the end, I was like, oh, it's ending on a cliffhanger. Okay, guess we're doing a second book. And then I was like, well, I can't have 2 books in a series. You have to have 3. So I plotted the third one more than I did the first 2. The second one, it just came out. Like in my head, I knew what was happening and it just came out. But I think that one was easier because I already knew the characters.
Right.
I knew what they would do. I knew, I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I knew she had to get away again. Like, and this is how she's gonna do it. So yeah, it's but my next, so I also have a Christmas thriller coming out, although it's a more comedic. It's not as dark. So I tried to go funny, and that one I kind of had to plot out the different murders. It's like the 12 days of Christmas almost. You're like, well, I got to kind of plan the murders in order to figure out what's going to happen. And then I have a mob series I'm working on that I'm trying to plot more because it has some the main character in her past and in her present. So I was like, well, they got to line up, otherwise I'm going to have a lot of plot holes. But normally I just sit down and I'll do my first draft. Like I'll discover my first draft and then I'll go through and fill those holes.
That sounds familiar. And oh my gosh, I did find myself having to go back. I had a calendar, you know, it was like a fake calendar made
Yes.
for my people. It's like, okay, if you started high school here, how old would you be? Okay. And so yeah,
Right?
I'm like, I am a discovery writer because it plays like a movie in my head and I write it on paper, but then I have to be the plotter because I can't have my 12-year-old kid in high school. Like it doesn't work.
I know, I do the same thing. I have my little spreadsheet.
Yeah.
This event happened here. Wait, they're not 18 yet. They wouldn't be able to actually do that or whatever it is.
Right. Exactly. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Oh, what else do you want to talk about?
What else do I want to talk about? Oh my goodness.
Mhm.
Um, okay. Maybe I have a question for you.
Okay.
So, based on your background, how do you attack a character's mind and figuring out who your characters are?
That is a great question. Um, so my background is psychology and counseling, and so and then I taught high school psychology for several years, and so people and human behavior, again, like that is my has been my bread and butter and that kind of thing. Like it's been a very important part, and so literally, and I just did this. I guess it was Thursday. I texted my husband and said, and literally my third book is still in the editing process, but had this idea of these people popped into my head after a conversation I had with a young man. And I thought, you know, he's autistic, and he has come a very long way. I've known him for years, and he's come a very long way in his just maturing and he handles his behavior now. And his parents had to learn a lot of things. And I thought, and his future plans. And I thought, man, he would be an intriguing character to write, just to kind of give him, because I like romance stories, and
Hmm.
I was like, how I would love to see his story play out, because right now he's 18, and so I'm
Hmm.
like, I wonder what his future is going to look like. And so I was kind of like changing the names to protect the innocent, but I ran with it. I was like, we're going to create this guy's future. I want to see how it plays out, and just kind of working through that. And so I sat down Thursday and I have like an entire page of what his life looks like, what I know about it, what I made up about it, and what it's going to look like in the future. And then I came up with his love interest, and I was just like, these are the people that just popped into my head. And I thought, huh. And I just kind of pull from the knowledge that I already
Yeah.
have, like textbook knowledge of autism and what that would look like, and what his behavior would be like, and what his quirks might be, and you know what his
Mhm.
neurodivergence would be. And so um yeah, I don't know, mine, it's very textbook in the beginning, and then it kind of
Yeah.
blossoms into peoplehood.
Right. Yeah. My husband actually just got diagnosed with autism, so we're learning all about that right now.
You
It's
know,
very
and sometimes
interesting.
it is. And honestly, like I struggled for the longest time with people putting labels on things, because
Mhm.
I myself don't want to be labeled as something and then be stuck in a box and not be able to break free of it. But then I realized later on in life how freeing a label can be, because it helps you to understand who you really are, and you know, be like, that's why I do that. And if it's something I need to fix, you know, but you know, if there's something about myself that I'm like, I don't like that label, I don't want that label, how can I break free of that label? Then I'm aware of that I can take steps to move away from whatever behavior or action that I'm taking, kind of thing. So yeah, that's interesting. And to be an adult, I can't imagine like finding
Yeah.
that label all of a sudden.
It's actually he described it like a weight came off because now, like you said, he understands what he's going
Yeah.
through, his mind, and
There's
as we
nothing
were
wrong with me. I'm
talking through
not
the
broken.
interview, yeah, and
Yeah.
as we were going through the process, we're like, oh, he does that. I totally picked up on it, but I didn't really associate it with anything, or even he's like, you don't count stairs? I was like, no, I just walk down them. But that's how his mind works, right? So it's very interesting to put his actions into perspective to how his brain processes. So I don't know.
Yes, because that is one of those the wild things about the human brain. Like what was it, probably last year or so, it became a very popular fact that not everybody has an inner monologue at all times. I have an inner monologue at all times. Like, I don't know how people walk around with a silent brain. That has never been a thing for me. There's never been a moment of silence in my brain, I don't think. And so the fact that we are all so different and we see it as, well, there's got to be something wrong with you if you don't have an inner monologue. I mean, that's not true, but for me, it was
Yeah.
just kind of a wild wake up call. Like, you don't talk to yourself?
Well, I'm not talking to myself, I'm talking to my pets. So
I mean, like there's constantly somebody being talked to, whether it is me or,
exactly.
the furniture, whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is with the genre that you're writing, I was just thinking about the fact that, I'm writing a romance story
Mhm.
with a guy with special quirks and
Mhm.
neurodivergences. Is there a genre that you would ever consider writing outside of the genre that you're currently writing?
So my first series is really dark thriller, so I call them thriller noirs. Then the second one's a comedic one, which was a lot harder. And my
I
third
can
series is
imagine.
going back to dark. I was like, I feel like I'm very comfortable writing dark stuff, which of course then your friends are like, who are you and how did this come out of your brain? But I have lot of ideas. I have a bulletin board with different, like I have thrillers, nonfiction ideas, and then I call them others. And I have like a Western up there and a couple romances. So who knows where my brain is gonna take me?
Choose
There
your own
will always be
adventure.
a, right? I'm sure there will always be a thriller element because I know the Western one. I tried to write that book first, but it just was a mash of like, there's a murder, and then there's a love story, and then there's this political statement. And I was like, oh, this is not going to be a good book. This is too much. We got to break this up. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do, but I got a lot of ideas. So I'm
I am
excited.
all about the ideas. Yeah, and that's what I love is that I'm never going to be without something to write. I just have to decide what I'm in the mood to write that day. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so what is one piece of advice you want or encouragement that you want listeners to walk away from hearing? If nothing else, what do you want them to hear today?
I would say if for creatives to take the breaks and the self-care that you need in order to rejuvenate your energy to produce your creative work, I think would be the big one. In addition to the, human trafficking awareness piece. But for the one piece I want people to take away is it's okay if life gets crazy and work-life balance. I mean, the scales are never equal, but and that's okay. Yeah,
But it's a nice goal to have.
it is. And if anyone
Absolutely.
figures out that solution, let me know.
Listen, if somebody figures it out, they're going to be a billionaire because they're going to put it everywhere and make people pay to find out.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if you hear this a lot too, but I find in the writing community, it's always you either have to go full time and you got to produce, 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 or you're a hobbyist and it's really not that big of a deal and blah. I'm like, or it could be a passion and just work at your own pace. And if you
And
decide to move
yeah.
full time, yay.
Yeah.
And it
I mean,
still might
yeah.
not make you lots of money, but I like doing it part time myself. I love my job, my day job. So
Oh, see, and that's so rare. It is so rare to find somebody who both has a passion to be creative and loves their full-time job, and they are not the same thing.
it is true. I am very lucky, but it's
Okay.
also very gratifying when I give all the evidence to the police. I'm like, please take this personally.
Oh, okay. So just out of morbid curiosity, obviously only what you're allowed to share, but what's been
Mhm.
your favorite like case that you were like, boom, busted?
My most recent one, which law enforcement's still working on, but it is public knowledge up here. So there was an employee who um, moved $10 million around and like took yeah, and so it took me 2 years to work on that file, and it was really interesting. I learned a whole bunch of new things about this particular type of investment fraud, and I don't know. It's just, of course, it's stressful, and you're just
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, ah. But and the poor clients that are impacted, but we work with them, and I think we reestablish trust with our clients. But yeah, that's my last one, and that I've been working on, and it's been good.
That's
It's been
awesome.
really satisfying to put all of that together. And if I had the evidence, it'd be taller than me. And working with, I hadn't worked with forensic accountants before, and that was a whole new ball of wax, and that was interesting. Like, I'm, I have I have very little educational background in my field. I just love my job and I'm good at it. So
Gosh,
yeah,
that's you like live a novel. Like you're living a
I do.
suspense novel all the time.
Right? Yeah.
Amazing.
You sit
Oh
there,
gosh.
follow the money every day, figure out what happened. And a lot of the times I mitigate the concerns too. Like it's not like the fraud is rampant where I work. Just that one makes it sound like it is, but yeah.
Yeah, that was a doozy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. Well, tell us how we can connect with you and your work.
Great. Well, readers and listeners can find me on Instagram and Facebook. I technically am on Twitter, but I don't actually go on Twitter anymore at NL Blandford, and my website's nlblandford.com. And I have my first series out now. It's called the Road series, but the first book's The Perilous Road to Her, and you have to read them in order. But if you sign up to my newsletter, you get a free novella. And that's going to be what I'm working on actually as my fourth book. It's the prequel of How the Villain Became the Villain. And yeah, the audiobook is also out for The Perilous Road to Her too, which was an adventure in creating. I loved
Did
it.
you record it yourself?
No, I cannot do all the voices, and I did not write my books thinking of audiobooks. So my lovely narrator, Rachel Music, put the 15 different accents that I wrote in my book into reality, but she did a great job. Love it.
That's amazing. That's not a skill that I have. I'll be honest. That is not a skill that I possess. So that's pretty fantastic.
I think I could do nonfiction, but I don't think I could do fiction.
You don't come across a lot of voices and accents in nonfiction.
Yeah.
Are your books on Amazon as well?
Yes,
We
they're
say that.
everywhere. You can get them. Ebook,
Okay,
paperback, audios on all the platforms. Libraries.
fantastic.
Support your
Oh
local
yeah.
library.
Support your local library. Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Well, thank you so much for being here today and hanging out and just having this conversation, just chilling on a Sunday afternoon. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Oh, I appreciate you having me. It's been great to get to chat with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.